Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone.
Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. My name is Connie Blackwood, and joining me today is my husband, Walter Blackwood.
Hi.
And today we're going to be talking about communication and relationships and why it's important and all the different types of communication that we can have in a relationship. So, Walter, I remember from last time that you said communication is the foundation of a healthy relationship.
Yes.
And we ended up talking about that at the very tail end.
Yeah.
So why don't you share more about that?
Okay. Well, thank you for remembering. It shows you were listening, which is great communication skills. So, communication. So, we were talking about the three pillars of a relationship. We had love, which is the choice in a relationship, trust, which is the equity in the relationship, and then communication, which is the foundation of the relationship. When I talk about communication as being the foundation of it, I look at it as every relationship is starts with communication, is based on the communication, right? How well you're connected with God is based on if you are hearing his word and if you are in prayer. Your prayer life is an indicator of how deep your connection is with God, how deep your relationship is with God. And it's the same thing in your other relationships as well. Like how a husband and wife, how we communicate shows how well we are working together as a unit, as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And when the communication breaks down, that is a crack in the foundation. That is repairable, but still it's a problem that needs to be addressed quickly.
Yeah, who wants a leaky basement?
Nobody.
So, what's an example of healthy communication and what's a or positive communication?
Some good examples of positive communication are expressing when you have an unmet need, or um, trying to connect with somebody. Let's look at friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you're turning around and calling friends once a week, check up on them, see how they're doing. It's communication and it's establishing that choice of love as well. You're choosing to be loving to them, and you're doing it through healthy communication with uh, expressing an unmet need. That can be in most relationships, even your relationship with yourself. If you're acknowledging the fact that there is something that needs to be addressed in your life, because it's one thing to have the thought, oh, you know what, I need to sleep more, or oh, you know what, I need to get off of YouTube for a while. And it's another thing to acknowledge it directly, to be
Mm.
intentional about it, and through that see it fulfilled.
See, I have to admit that this is actually the one that I struggle with the most out of the three pillars. Love, I think, comes easy for me. Like
You
I'm
wrote the
really,
you wrote a book on it.
I know. So I'm like a really loving person, and I've grown a lot in that area. And then like I'm also a very trusting person until you like do something that causes that trust to be like shaken. So I think the part that I really struggle with is communication. And I think it's because I am an introvert. So
Sure.
in my mind, like I think all these wonderful things, but I don't express them
Hmm.
because I actually have to actively go, okay, I should say this to actually say it. Because so much of like I'm very introspective being an introvert. And so for me, it's all in my like I'm always processing things behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so to actually say things out loud to people is hard. Like I find it easier to write a letter or write an email than to actually say things out loud a lot of times, especially if it's like encouragement or positive. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. And so I act it. So when I'm actually saying something, it's actually something I'm being intentional in. And so I like what you're saying about being intentional
Mhm.
because it is true for especially for people like me who are very introspective and introverts. It's hard. It's actually something you have to focus on to do. And so that's why I thought this would be a really great idea just to have a podcast about communication because that's the area I struggle in the most.
See, and I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit here because communication isn't just about the words we speak, right?
Hmm.
Like I did security investigations for 13 years and I did a lot of training in conflict resolution and identifying markers and stuff like that. And one of the big things that I took away from that was that only 10% of what we say is the words we speak, or the way
Hmm.
we communicate is the words we speak. It's mostly body language, it's tone, volume, cadence, everything. I'm reminded there's a sentence, I don't know if you learned it in high school, I did, talking about inflection. And it was the sentence, I didn't say you should kill them. And if you put emphasis on each individual word, it means something different. I didn't say you should kill them. 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 I didn't say you should kill them, right?
Yeah.
So there's like what, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven different meanings, all using the same sentence. And
Just depending on which word you give inflection to.
yeah, and even more than that, when I say you're not giving yourself enough credit, you're talking about how you would rather write a letter or use these other means of communication to express. And those are means of communication, right?
Okay, maybe I should say verbal. Is that better?
Yeah. You're not a massively verbal person, but you still communicate quite a bit and effectively. I still have, I don't know where they are at the moment. I think I put them in my drawer. You gave me 3 index cards,
Yes,
these amazing encouragements. And
that's proving my point.
yeah, they
They're
did
written.
this major thing in my heart. Like they were
Okay,
really loving and it made such a difference in my day, my weeks, and I still have them. I
that's
rearranged my
awesome.
office, so I don't know exactly where I put them, but I will find them because I want to put them up on the wall again. But you see what I'm talking about with the different means of communication.
Hmm.
You still
Yeah,
talk, but
I do still talk. And,
yeah.
anyone who's heard the podcast before or has seen a webinar knows this. I can talk.
Mhm.
It's just intentional, right? And
Yeah.
so in those times, I'm actually being very intentional in what I say and, preparing ahead of time and everything. So, like I said, I can do it when I'm being intentional, but it takes me being intentional to a lot of times say what's on my heart or on my mind. And, it doesn't just flow out of me. Like there's some people where, it's so natural, like it's like breathing
Yeah.
and, it's pretty cool.
Like
But like, but
constantly
for
talking.
yeah, so but for me, loving is like that, right? And for some people, loving is the hardest part of the equation. So,
And just quick rabbit trail, I recommend to anybody listening to this podcast, go back to one of the ones where it's just Laura and Connie. Close your eyes and try and figure out who's talking. Because I don't know about you, but I hear these two ladies talk, and sometimes it's hard to tell who it is because their voices are very similar.
this is true.
Just a little aside, and an encouragement to go back and listen to all the other podcasts if you missed any of them.
And also, we're also going to be having a webinar about these topics as well, coming up on February 6th
Yes.
at 7 p.m. And you can register for those on our website, which is nosafoundation.com. And we'll be talking more in depth about not just communication, but also the other two pillars of relationship that we've been talking about the
Hmm.
last couple podcasts, the love piece and the trust piece.
Yes.
So join us for that. It'll be great. You'll hear more
My
of
first
Walter.
webinar. It's going to be really cool.
Yes. You'll hear from both of us still.
And when it just getting back to communication, because that was an excellent spot. I loved that. One of the things that people get scared about with communication is that it's messy a lot of the time. Like it's easy to just do love. Well, okay, not easy. Some people it's really difficult, but for a lot of people it's easy to do loving things. But sometimes, especially when the conversation is hard, it becomes a lot more difficult to communicate.
Hmm.
People get scared. I know this is a problem I have because anybody who knows me knows I love to talk. I will talk your ear off. I will not stop. I could probably talk for 20, 30 minutes without really stopping for much more than a breath here and there.
And he does.
She's not wrong. But if I need to talk to you about something where something is bothering me or I'm having an issue in our relationship, and it's never anything big. It's every relationship has their hiccups and their work throughs. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it not because I don't want our relationship to grow or I don't want the thing that's bothering me to be worked through. It's because the last thing I want to do is hurt you. I don't want to come across as unloving, you know?
Mhm.
And so,
And sometimes it gets messy, like you
yeah,
said,
exactly.
but
But
it doesn't get any better if you leave it.
no.
Like I you had a really good analogy about the fridge.
Oh, yeah. So I read this in a Max Lucado book where he talked about how he left his fridge on a vacation and he hadn't plugged it in, or there was a power surge or something. One way or the other, the fridge shut off and he had not cleaned it out before he went on vacation. He came back and he saw the fridge and he did not want to open that fridge because anybody who has seen a freezer or a fridge that's been unplugged for a while, it's not going to be pleasant when you open that.
Mm-mm.
And there's the fear of what's going on. I know if I leave a Tupperware container in the fridge for more than a couple days, and I just toss away the Tupperware. I don't want to have to deal with what's inside. And it's the same thing with communication. And we need to open the Tupperware. We need to open the fridge, people. We need to clean out the fridge. And as hard as it is,
And the cool thing about that analogy is this. You don't necessarily want to throw away a fridge. I
no.
mean, it's expensive. You want to clean that sucker out. And so the same thing is true when you're in a relationship. You don't want to toss the relationship over an issue that you're not willing to talk about. So it's worth facing the hard conversation to save the relationship versus tossing it. Because think about all the time and investment and everything else you've poured into that relationship, right? It matters.
Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with today in society when it comes to relationships. Why the divorce rate is so high is because people have been taught it's okay to throw away the fridge. It's okay that uh, you're having a hard time in the relationship. You're not feeling that spark. Something's gone bad in the back of the fridge. Don't worry about it. Just toss the whole thing.
Yeah, or you that there's this real huge issue that you just don't want to confront and you just let it fester and fester and fester. It's not going to get any better.
No.
No, it's going to get worse. And, it's going to get so out of control that, you may have to throw out the fridge
Yeah.
because you're just not willing to deal with it. And it's so much better to catch it sooner than later, right? Like
Oh,
the sooner
absolutely.
you catch it, the less work it will be to fix it.
And one thing I was thinking of there is uh, like you were talking about how communication was your weak of those three, it was the weakest for you. For
Hmm.
me, it's always been trust. We're sort of going back into last podcast just a little bit for a moment. Um, like I have big trouble trusting people
Hmm.
because of things that have happened in my life. And so that's why I struggle so much in communicating in some things. I know,
Hmm.
right? I know who you are in your heart. I know how you feel about me. And I know how important our relationship is to you. But still, there are some topics or some things where my insecurities or my trust issues get tripped, and then the communication starts to break down a little bit.
And I think for me, I think like I'm thinking about those times that you're talking about. On the other end of that, I think it's more even a breakdown in communication because I'm expecting you to say it the way that I would say it.
Mm,
And then when you don't, I feel disrespected or I feel like you aren't hearing me or you don't understand me or you don't care. And none of those are true, right? And that's just my perception in the moment based on my view and based on my filters.
yeah.
And it's not fair to judge you through that because you don't have the same worldview, you don't have the same filters. And I have to take a step back and go, wait a minute, okay, he loves me. His heart is always positive towards me. So the way I'm receiving this is not because of him, it's because of me. Okay, so what is he really trying to say? Right. And so being able to step back and evaluate that and actually hear what their heart is helps soften those things. Because I think a lot of times we expect people to talk to us the way that we would talk to us. And we no two people are the same. Good
No.
luck finding that person. They're not there because you're the only person who can do that. Because
And
you're the only person who's lived your life. Like
yeah,
even me and my sister, we have the same family and we have the same way we grew up. Yet we had very different experiences and we are very different people. Yeah, our voices might sound alike, and yeah, we view a lot of the world the same way, but there are some very different things about both of us. And there's no way that we could totally 100% of the time relate to one another in every single aspect. It's impossible.
exactly. And it's a good thing, especially when
Mm,
you have a couple that, they come from two different experiences because they're able to grow in different ways. And, it's like two cogs. You don't want the pieces to match exactly. Excuse me. You want them to fit together, to
yeah.
work together. Um,
And on that topic or on that note, I mean, where you're weak, I'm strong. Where I'm weak, you're strong. And so it actually works really well together. And so I feel like it's really good so that we have these differences. And I think of Laura and me, in the places where we're not similar, we actually help each other grow in those areas.
yeah.
And I love that.
And though it does present some interesting challenges.
Hmm.
I think about my yelling voice.
Oh dear.
So, uh, early in our relationship, I would get frustrated a lot
Hmm.
because Connie and I would be having a conversation from my side. We were having a conversation, and then she would be almost in tears telling me to stop yelling at her. And I was dumbfounded. To me, this is how I was talking to her, how I'm speaking right now. This is how I was speaking to her as far as I was aware.
It wasn't though.
No. And so I would, for, oh, geez, this was a while, a
Yeah.
year or more, where it
Oh,
was like,
it was like 2 or 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was a tragedy in my family. My stepfather passed away due to an aneurysm completely unexpectedly. He had Parkinson's, so we were expecting him to go south for a while, but we weren't expecting it just like that because of an aneurysm. But Connie and I went to BC where my mother was living to look after her and help her through the crisis. And when we were there, my mother and Jim, my stepfather, they had bought some cell phones, two cell phones from TELUS in order to keep in contact because of his Parkinson's. And they had just gotten them, I think, a couple months before or something like that. And so my mother was on the phone while Connie and I were sitting with her, and she was trying to get this guy from TELUS to let her out of the contract because she didn't need two cell phones, right? And the guy was just flat out, nope, sorry, you're gonna have to buy out the contract full price. That's just the way, that's our policy. And also, and my mother was talking to him like this. Her voice was the same volume. She wasn't getting loud, but she was just like, and the 10-year-old Walter, the hairs were standing up on the back of his neck, right? I like it triggered me hard trauma from a childhood, right? Because that was mom's yelling voice, and uh-oh. And Connie grabs me by the arm, shakes me, goes, "That's the voice. That's how you yell at me." And I was almost in tears. I'm like, no, I turned into my mother. Right? So we bring baggage with us into a
Mhm.
relationship, into every relationship, even our relationships with God. We bring our own baggage into it. And we have to learn how to communicate with the other person or with God.
And always be open to when the other person says you're you're yelling at me or you're talking to me in this certain way. At least be willing to like look at it and see if that's really what's going on, because you never know.
Hmm.
Like Walter had no idea, and then there was this one time when he was on medication and it was making him like think that everything was level and at this one place, and he'd be so angry he didn't even know he was angry, right? So
Hmm.
be careful so when you're taking medications that you watch how you are when you're on them, and make sure that you're still speaking from your heart even in the midst of being on these medications. And if you
Absolutely.
find that it's really bad for you, consult your doctor about getting on a different medication that may not affect you the same way.
I know that, like, I teach an anger management course, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is how, when you're in different emotional states, different parts of your brain are activated, and anything that adjusts your neurochemistry can change how you can rationally think, right? Especially when you're in a heightened state like anger or anxiety, right? Or
Mhm.
even joy, which uses the same part of the brain as anxiety.
Well, excitement.
Well, yeah, excitement. Yes. Thank you for the correction on that. But what I'm saying is, like what Connie's talking about with the medications, absolutely, totally there. Totally there with you, dear.
Yeah. But once again, I had to take a step back and go, this isn't Walter, this is the medication. And so, and then we were able, like later on, to have a conversation about that. And he was able to talk to his doctor, which was cool.
Yeah. And we changed things out, and I'm much better now.
Yeah. And then there's times when he thinks I'm yelling too. And it's because in my house, things were loud. There were 5 kids in the house. And so when we have conversations and get excited about things, we got loud,
Yeah.
and so there's times when I'm, raising my voice, but I'm not pissed off or angry. I'm just,
Yeah.
um,
Just angry or
I'm,
just
I'm, I'm just
emphatic.
sometimes I'm even just frustrated or like just passionate about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's coming across as me yelling and being aggressive in our conversation. And so I have to watch that too, right? Like I have to watch how much passion I have in my voice and be understanding that it's impacting Walter in a negative way, right?
Because nobody raised their voice in my household. People were very quiet, but then hence the quiet yelling. I think that's what we started calling it for a while there too, quiet
Yeah.
yelling. And
Well, I think the
so,
thing is too is like you only had two people in your house
yeah,
most of the time, right? So when you have seven people in the house, if you want to be heard, you got to be loud.
that is very fair. Um, just sidestepping a little bit from the talk about like verbally communicating.
Yes.
Um, we mentioned a little bit last podcast. I really recommend if you haven't heard it. After this, go back and listen to that, and then listen to this one again. We could use the views. Uh, we talked a little bit about the love languages, the five love languages.
Yeah.
Um, that is another way that we communicate is through our love languages.
Hmm.
For Connie, a big one is acts of service, and for me, a really big one is physical touch. And so early in our relationship, I was always communicating through physical touch.
Which was
And
smothering me.
oh yeah, it drove her nuts. I put my hand on her back all the time, or on her leg, holding her hand, little things like that. I was trying to communicate with her and demonstrate love to her through
And
the
I would
physical
do
communication.
and I would do things for him all the time. And he was like, I could care less that you're doing this for me, right?
Hmm. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I was definitely confused. Why are you getting me water when I can get up and get my own?
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like in those
Yeah.
instances, you're like, what are you doing? Like, and for me, that was like me showing you how much I loved you, how much I cared about you, you know. And so for me, it was hard adjusting to that. But when we learned, it was, you know, we were able to be more intentional.
It definitely made things different. Um, we learned how to communicate, and that's what I'm talking about. And taking this a step further, looking at our relationship with God, we learning how to communicate with Him, right?
Mhm.
Learning how to hear His voice as well is very important because it's not like you get a rule book. Well, actually, you kind of do get a rule book when you become a follower of Christ. It's called the Bible.
It's not really a rule book, it's more of a handbook. It's
Yeah.
like learning how to drive your car, right? Like you get one of these brand new cars and the book is like an inch thick because of all the new technological advancements, right? Well, the Bible is like the handbook to like learning how to communicate with God and how to live a life with God.
Yeah, I heard it explained once Bible, Bible, basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah,
I think it
I
was in
like
a
that.
song. I
It is
could
a
be
song.
wrong. It was a song?
Yeah, it is a song. Yeah.
Fair enough. Not having been raised Christian, I sometimes forget about this stuff that was done in the 90s and 2000s. But yeah, how we communicate with God, like learning how to hear his voice, learning how to recognize when God is talking to us is a way to improve our communication with him, which is improving our relationship with him. Like I said earlier, how well you communicate with the other person in the relationship really denotes how deep the relationship is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because if you're just acquaintances, you're gonna occasionally
Hi,
say,
how are
hi,
you?
how are you doing? And,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's not gonna be a big deal. But if I ever was just like, hi to Laura and had a 2-second conversation on the phone, I think she'd be like, what's up? Right? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? Or even with Walter, if I was just like, hi, and then I went to my room for the rest of the night and didn't talk to him, he'd be like, oh, what did I do? Right? Like, very different.
That is exactly what I'd be thinking. What did I do?
Very, very different levels of relationship. And, when you're a Christian, your relationship with God should be deeper than any of your other relationships. He should be your first love. And when that's the case, that means that you should actually have deeper communication with God than you do with other people. And so what does that look like? And so I think when Walter was talking about how does God talk to us, I think sometimes we miss God speaking to us because he talks to us in so many different ways,
Yeah.
right? Like he's talked to me through his word, he's talked to me through sermons, he's talked to me through nature, he's talked to me through dreams and visions, and he's talked to
From
me
other
with this
people.
from other people with his still small voice, and even a couple times audibly, like he talks so many different ways. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just think, oh, well, if we haven't heard his voice out loud, then we haven't heard God. And no, he talks in so many different ways. There was one time I was sitting beside a creek and I was just sitting there watching the water, and it was in the fall, and they had pruned all these trees, and there was branches in the creek, and it had kind of created a dam. And it was a time in my life where God was doing a lot of work, and I felt like he was pruning me a lot. And I could relate to that. And he literally said to me in that still small voice, you're like that creek. The water's not coming through. The water of my Holy Spirit isn't getting through all the debris that we've cut out.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And he's like, we need to go through a season of burning that away. And I was like, ooh, that's not going to be fun.
No.
And the next season actually was freeing because that not only did that stuff, I actually had to let it go. Right. So the burning was me actually letting all that debris go and letting it be taken from my life. If I just left it there, it would actually hinder my walk with God. But because I allowed God to do the work and I actually released all of that stuff, God was able to work in my life in a way deeper way and be able to flow through my life so much more effectively, is the word.
Yeah.
And so for me, he even talks to me through nature.
Hmm. I remember, so I have a interesting past, but part of that showed me that I didn't trust. Because of that, I didn't trust. Oh, surprising! Walter didn't trust something. Didn't trust prophecy. I
Mm,
didn't. I didn't like it. I thought it was too easily corruptible, too easily misunderstood, and so I didn't like it. And then Connie took me to a prophecy seminar. I was half paying attention through most of it. And then they started doing some exercises. And in one, we were supposed to picture ourselves playing a game with God. And try as I might, I couldn't picture myself playing a game with God. I saw an image in my head. I saw an image of three lines, three squiggle lines, almost like claw marks or a pattern in fur. And so I thought of a tiger. And that's how I interpreted what I was seeing. And I'm like, this is not what I am supposed to be seeing, God. God, show me something on task so I don't look like an idiot when they start asking me about this. They didn't call on me. Thank you, Lord. I appreciate that. And then the next activity we had was to pair up with somebody we didn't know and think about a message that God wanted to share with that person. And I'm like, oh, great. I can't get these lines out of my head. I can't get these stripes out of my mind. And so I go up to the guy, this one guy that I paired up with, never met him before, haven't met him since. And I look at him I'm like, you know what? I'm trying. I really am trying. I'm not big on this prophecy thing. I'm not even sure. Like I was still pretty young as a Christian. I'm like, I'm not even sure, if I'm really hearing from God here. But I just can't get these stripes, these like tiger stripes out of my head. And that's how I described them, tiger stripes. And the guy went white. And he's like, how did you, like, where did you get tiger stripes from? I'm like, I don't know. It's just been stuck in my head for like the last 15 minutes. And the guy lifted his sleeve and he had just gotten a tiger tattoo on his arm. And I realized then in that moment that God was trying to hit, like, I have a thick skull. Sometimes God needs to use a pretty big hammer to get into my head. And God was showing me that that was a way I could hear him. It didn't have to be audibly, it didn't have to be directly from the word. Sometimes he would show me a picture and lead me to interpreting, figuring out what that picture meant.
And sometimes I love that. And when you said that, it caused me to think sometimes it's not even a full picture.
No.
Sometimes it's a color. Sometimes it's a smell.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's, just one thing. Sometimes it's lyrics to a song. It's exactly what you need in that moment. And whenever God's speaking to you, the way you know it's God is this. It lines up with scripture and it lines up with his character. If it's both of those things, it's God.
And if you're still having trouble identifying, then you can also go to another person
Mm-hmm.
that has a strong relationship with God that you trust, that you have relationship with, love, trust, communication,
Mm-hmm.
and ask them to pray about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they can help you discern. Because sometimes it can get a little cloudy with, well, I want this to happen, so maybe that's what God's telling me to do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Or maybe you haven't found anything specific in scripture, and so you're unsure. So that's another good time when you can seek the counsel of a trusted Christian that you know, or even a trusted pastor that you know, or a trusted mentor or counselor that you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they can all be of assistance in that for sure.
Connie, where can a person find a mentor?
I'm glad you asked that, Walter. We have mentors at nosafoundation.com. And you can just go on to there and you can look at the mentors that are available and check their schedule and sign up for a mentoring session.
Golly, Connie, that is amazing. Thank you for that totally unscripted moment.
It was unscripted, but oh, you're hilarious.
I speak English, bad English, and sarcasm. So,
Oh.
communication, there's like, we could talk for hours about communication because there's funny, you can communicate for hours about communication.
But if you want to hear more, come to the webinar on February 6th. We'll be talking more about communication and, like I said, the other two pillars. And we're so glad that you were able to join us today. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the No Sunleashed podcast. See you then. Bye.
Bye.